Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. They just released the Archon Hero Talent Tree, and I'm ready to break it on down for you, okay? Starting off, we've got Power Surge, where casting Halo also causes you to create a halo around you at 100% effectiveness every 5 seconds for 10 seconds. Additionally, the radius of Halo is increased. Now, keep in mind with Halo, a while ago, it's been a minute, but it does not pull extra mobs for you, so keep that in mind. If you're not in combat with an enemy, it's not going to be randomly pulling those things, which is quite important because you'll see how it works in just a sec. Perfected form, your healing done is increased by 10% while Apotheosis is active, and for 20 seconds after you cast Holy Word Salvation. So, great buff for dungeons while Apotheosis is active. You have your healing buff. Great buff for raids because you have the 20 seconds after you cast Holy Word Salvation. Maybe this would also bring you to run Answered Prayers and always be locked into Answered Prayers for the healing buff you're getting during that 8-second period for the procced Apotheosis that you get out of that talent. That could be really huge for this as well. Allies healed by your Halo receive 10% increased healing from you for 5 seconds. When you're proccing this Resonant Energy pretty much on everybody, because you're just hitting everybody with Halo, retracting, hitting everybody with Halo again. It's a nice consistent healing buff that you're also getting every 1 minute. So keep in mind, it's not just the first Halo hit that's hitting everybody and applying this effect, but it's also blooming out of you, and so you're constantly maintaining this healing buff onto your allies. Creating the Halo grants Surge. So a little bit of synergy here with the surges on the right side. Your healing done with Flash Heal is increased when you have Surge of Light up. And when you consume a Surge of Light proc, you also reduce the cooldown of Sanctify by 4 seconds. So Sanctify is by far your most important holy word in a raid environment. And in a key environment, you don't really have much of a way to get your Sanctifies back. You kind of just like send them when you have them, and then you just wait for them really to stack up again, or you get them back from like Apotheosis. In the middle for the defensive node, usually they've been on like the bottom right for whatever reason. But for this one, Powered Fortitude can grant you 5% additional stamina. Not the entire raid, just you. The additional stamina, or you can have a little bit increased duration on Spirit of Redemption. It's kind of tough to find something that's going to add to Spirit of Redemption without making it too OP, so this one's kind of straightforward. You have the option between Shock Pulse, where you can have a slow for enemies, and since it stacks twice, it's pretty easy to actually get it up to a 50% slow very rapidly. Or you can get Incessant Screams, where your Psychic Scream creates an image of you, and after 4 seconds, it'll let out a Psychic Scream of its own. So what you can do here is just get rid of the UI, and then there's me, and then you can see yourself scream. Yay! This is like actually pretty good. Usually you're not getting a lot of fears that are getting like DR'd the way that like stuns are in a dungeon environment. The challenge is you just need to make sure everything is grouped together and is actually actively taking damage, because you want to stop a spell cast and then have the fear get broken by damage to get good value out of it. So it's good utility, you just got to make sure you use it in the right way. Energy compression, Halo damage, and healing is increased by 30%. This one, just pretty straightforward. You can really think of the Halo effect as kind of like a healing over time effect, in that as it pulses inwards and outwards, you're just naturally adding more healing to your allies as it goes on. So this one is really, really good for like steadier damage, where the entire 10-second duration of Halo bursts and expansions and contractions, you're going to get healing value. Whereas you might go after something like Sustained Potency, where you're getting the increased duration of Apotheosis if you're casting a Halo during it, which you probably wouldn't in a dungeon environment at least. But if it's not active, then up to 6 seconds is stored and apply the next time that you gain Apotheosis. So instead of the 20-second uptime that you're going to have for Apotheosis, it should be like 26. Not too shabby. I like that there's some options into that one. It's also going to be pretty interesting if you go Answered Prayers in like a raiding environment, because then this could make Answered Prayers even more valuable, since it's just naturally giving you more uptime. So by naturally casting these Halos, you get a second here, second there every single time, and then it gets added up to 6 seconds. So usually it might be like 2 or 3 extra seconds or something along those lines. So if a fight is very bursty and people are getting like topped off very quickly, then energy compression may not be as good, but hopefully they slow down healing enough. We'll see. Concentrated Infusion, your PI grants you an additional 10% haste. It's kind of whatever for Holy Priest. You know, I'm sure Shadow Priests are going to like this one, but it doesn't really do much for us. As I already mentioned, all the right side is based on Surge, and then Divine Halo at the end. Halo now centers around you and returns to you after it reaches its max distance, healing allies and damaging enemies every time it passes. So the first talent is causing you to just radiate all the halos. So you radiate and then it disappears, radiate and then it disappears. The end capstone is causing them to come back to you. And so then they come back to you and then they're going to be expanding once more. My big impression from a gameplay perspective is that this is kind of a glorified healing over time effect. You're constantly bringing these halos in and out, and while it's pretty beneficial in a dungeon environment, especially to have that like increased healing bonus on the target so that your single target healing can be a bit more effective, in raids it feels like something you kind of just use before heavy damage goes out. So you're having these expansions and contractions, hitting people with the increased healing bonus on hand, so that way you're going to be able to make your holy words or your raid cooldowns hit that much more effectively. I would say, in general, playing with this, it felt a little bit more on the boring side, in that, yeah, it's adding a little bit of extra damage to the equation, but it's something that you're not really having too much control over, just like regular Halo was. The like actual quest text or the flavor text of Archon is about being devout and connected to the light and shadow, where you're blessed from higher beings to enter into an ascended state, becoming an ultimate version of yourself. Well, I don't really see how Archon quite does that. It's nice to have the empowerments given to like Apotheosis or Salvation and like how they weave those together to be good value in raids or keys. I like that. It's the sort of like, I don't know, art or hype about having these Halo surges. You have a like nice little like spell animation at your feet, but I guess this is about par for the course from what I've expected from Holy Priest like flavor abilities, in that they're like very straightforward and very like basic. It feels like it touches the surface and like that's about it. I guess in some ways it's better than having some of the other options we've seen with like Druid, where it just kind of like naturally enhances your abilities and it's kind of a footnote at the bottom of your healing breakdown. At least this is going to make Halo feel more relevant, but it's also really strange that it pretty much would kill Divine Star outright, and that there's nothing that actually relates to Divine Star in its entirety. Basically, to run Divine Star, you'd have to go play Oracle, and we already know our problems with Oracle Priest, right? So that's it's kind of an odd thing to be going through it. When I was going through the gameplay, like I mentioned, it felt good being able to have the increased healing bonus onto the allies. That way, both with Apotheosis itself and with, oh, what is the talent's name once again? Resonant Energy, right? Where you're healing onto allies healed by the Halo receive 10% increased healing for 5 seconds. This one was only applying to myself, but I think it should be obviously applying to everybody all the time. And what it ends up giving you is, I want to say it's like 15 seconds or so of uptime, because it's right when you cast the Halo and then it triggers the heal. And then for the next 10 seconds, you're radiating all these Halos in and out. So it kind of gives you a 15-second increased healing buff onto your allies and basically the entire raid for that period. So you could like Halo and then start channeling a divine hymn. And then if you're using like Salvation, you know, you could hit Salvation, or sorry, you could hit Halo into a Salvation, and then you also have a really big increased healing bonus, and then you could try to take advantage of like an Answered Prayers proc to give you more Sanctifies and crank out really high value Sanctifies. You know, there's a little bit of like combo stacking that can be done, which is pretty interesting in a raid. I think especially if there's like consistent damage going out, it would be really interesting to see Holy not fully go away from being like a consistent output healer, but having the option and the opportunity to be like a bit more bursty. And that's what a lot of these like hero talents do, is they kind of like push a lot of your output into more like concentrated amounts, because you can just stack modifiers on top of each other this way. So it is actually going to be pretty interesting additions to the gameplay without being too bloated. It's more like, hey, your Halo's a little longer of a cooldown now. It's I don't know if I mentioned this, but instead of a 45 second cooldown, it becomes a minute. And so it's, hey, you have a longer cooldown, but it's also about what do you do with it? How do you utilize it to get better value? Halo being a larger part of your healing breakdown is going to be pretty fun. Having consistent just output bonus onto your allies and making Apotheosis and Salve also feel really good in the process. Feels great. I don't really feel like the flavor of it actually adds much to the biggest question of like, is it fun? I'd say it's probably pretty fun in a raid environment to add another layer that you can choose to opt into to adjust gameplay, but it's also not like rocket science to be able to optimize your gameplay around it, right? And then in a dungeon environment, I think it's a lot better than Oracle, but I don't think it's nearly as fun as some of the best options that we've seen so far. And I don't think I really super heavily connect to the lore or the fantasy that this one's bringing to you. I don't know why they don't like mix holy and shadow effects or something like that in any way, really, with this tree. That's another thing, is that it's kind of like you're an Archon Holy Priest or an Archon Shadow Priest, and there's not actually any crossover. It's sort of like you found a big dude to empower you, and like this is the ability they give you, you know? But otherwise, it doesn't seem like there's crossover. But I guess Voidweaver doesn't really have like a holy crossover element to it. But I felt like that kind of made sense because, you know, it's Disc and Shadow. So, I don't know. I think this one, I would give it about a B. I think this one's fine. I think there's actually not like downsides. There's not active downsides to it. And so I'll say that's a good thing, right? But I don't think that something super stands out to me that is going to make this like, oh my god, epic fun. I don't particularly like that they have kind of like outlawed a talent in Divine Star in the process. I think it's a lot better when these talents sort of like guide you towards one option or guide you towards another option. Because I mean, at this point, they could just straight up get rid of Divine Star, at least from this talent setup with Holy and Shadow. I don't know. Feels a little bit weird. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for tuning in to our quick review here of the Archon Hero Talents. And if you haven't subscribed already, be sure to do so because we got lots more alpha coverage coming soon. Thank you for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time.